Hi there, everybody. Mm, Lots of welcome to everyone. We're right on 1 o'clock and we do want to start right on time. So I wanted to just introduce myself. I'm Vicky Condon, founder and CEO of Raise Foundation. And I'm very grateful that you've taken the time to join us for a discussion about what we can do to help young people to find connection and belonging amongst the youth mental health crisis in Australia. We're thrilled to include so many industry experts in today's discussion, and you can see our panel here with us, and we're very much looking forward to speaking with them. I'd like to start today by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which I'm so grateful to be sitting on today. I pay my respects to elders, past and present, and extend my respects to the elders of other communities, as well as any First Nations people who may be here with us today. Raise mentees who identify as First Nations are more likely to be in schools outside of major cities. Unfortunately, it's often harder to find mentors for those schools, so they get put on hold. Our First Nations mentees are more likely to face challenges and are more likely to experience mental health and environmental issues. We will continue doing all that we can to match First Nations mentees with trained and trusted Raise mentors in an environment that is culturally safe and empowering. We wanted to encourage all of you to ask questions throughout our conversation today, so please do feel welcome to put any questions that you have into the chat, and we'll endeavour to get to them after the panel. Hopefully we will have enough time. It's always a bit challenging with that, so fingers crossed we have some time for those. Since we founded Raise in 2008, we've had over 15,000 young people graduate from our program, and we've trained over 10,000 volunteer mentors. And over that period, we've developed our internal evaluation process, which has demonstrated statistically significant impact. And that significance has been very important to us, something that we've nurtured and been really proud of. However, I often talk to our mentors who say that they're not so sure if they're making any difference at all. They're very humble about their impact. And I guess today, really what I wanted to say is that, thanks to the Australian Government Department of Health, we've been able to realise our goal of completing an independent evaluation of our mentoring program. My hope is that our mentors feel proud when they learn that this evaluation proves that they are, in fact, making a significant difference. Our chairman, Leon, and I would like to acknowledge the wonderful work of John Quatch and his team from the University of Melbourne, who completed our outcomes evaluation, and Nazia Ahmed and her team from the Social Outcomes Lab, who completed our process and economic evaluations. We were so lucky to work with the best of the best, and we learned so much from all of them. I would like to thank the members of our Research Advisory Council, a couple of those members are here with us today, for supporting us in so many ways, and our Evaluation Advisory Group, who gave their expert guidance throughout as well. My very special thanks go to Lucy Snowball, our Data and Youth Insights Director at Raise, whose leadership throughout this project was second to none. I'm going to play a video just now, and I have everything crossed that this will work. The joys of technology. Here we go. This is a video from the University of Melbourne, just giving a brief overview of the work that they did for us.
Do you feel connected to your peers, your family, and your community?
Do you tend to bounce back quickly after hard times?
Do you feel like you've got adults in your life that you can turn to in those moments when you're having challenges? I was inspired to work with Raise because I could see how long they've been around and the evidence that they have built themselves. They were really willing to have someone independent come in to verify what they found in previously. So they were really willing to put themselves out there. By having an independent evaluation, it's almost a validation of their work. So does an independent person who comes in, do they actually see the same findings? And if we do, then that's where you can have greater trust in the findings that RAISE have presented previously, as well as schools can have greater trust that if they do implement RAISE in their setting, that they can achieve outcomes.
For the data collection approach, we used a pre-post evaluation. So we looked at outcomes before the program and outcomes after the program, and we chose this approach to measure the impact. We also used standardized measures that have established reliability and validity to make sure that we're measuring what RAISE is looking at changing through their program.
It was also beneficial for them to have a comparison group because it helps them understand whether the changes they see in their students are better than changes that would have been observed if those students did not receive the RAISE program. So it really gives that comparison of like what would happen if RAISE wasn't there. The fact that we saw quite large differences between the groups shows that how much of a difference RAISE was making for their students.
We gathered qualitative data through the surveys in written response from students, and we asked them about their experiences with the RAISE program. I think the most significant finding from the student surveys was that students' help seeking improved in comparison to their peers who didn't participate in the RAISE program. We also saw positive changes in students' connectedness, their engagement, and their perseverance. Existing research on school-based mentoring is mixed, depending on the outcomes they're looking at and the structure of the program. So I think this evaluation really showed that because of RAISE's clear structure, they do produce positive outcomes.
So it's not about just simply putting an adult in front of a young person, but helping them to understand what to talk about. That becomes really important for the outcomes. It's quite rare for these type of projects to be able to see positive outcomes across the board. So not only were we seeing a number of outcomes, but the size of those outcomes was also really surprising. So we always hope for positive outcomes, but the magnitude and how big they were one of our surprising aspects.
So exciting. Okay, so I really would love to introduce you now to all of our panel members who are the stars of the show today. Firstly, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Lucas Walsh, who is the Director of Monash Centre for Youth Policy and Education Practice, a national research centre seeking to understand and improve the life outcomes of young Australians. Lucas leads the Australian Youth Barometer, an influential nationally representative annual survey that is released today of young people about the issues, pressures and opportunities that they face. For 2 decades, his research has explored the political, economic, cultural, social and technological dimensions of young people's lives and how evidence can be used more effectively to improve their life outcomes. Welcome, Lucas. Rachel Christie is the GM of the Centre for Evidence and Insights at Mission Australia. Rachel leads Mission Australia's Centre for Excellence that drives the impact and effectiveness of their services and their organisation using data and evidence. Her team has recently won national awards for excellence in evaluation and best use of data for community impact. Rachel has a background in international development, currently lives in Queensland with her family. Welcome, Rachel. Doug Taylor is the CEO of the Smith family. Doug was appointed CEO of the Smith family in August 2021, and he's built a 30-year career in the social sector with national and international experience in leading innovative social impact initiatives in partnership with the not-for-profit, government, philanthropic and corporate sectors. Welcome, Doug. And Lucy Snowball is RAISE Foundation's Data and Youth Insights Director. Lucy is a data and evaluation expert and is passionate about the power of evidence to improve outcomes. Lucy has built an 18-year career in the government and more recently the not-for-profit sector on the values of kindness, honesty, courage and curiosity. Lucy joined RAISE Foundation as the Data and Youth Insights Director in June 2021, leading program evaluation and ensuring the youth voice is embedded across our organisation here at RAISE. Welcome, Lucy. And the most remarkable, David Gonski AC, is here with us as well to host our panel. David is a well-known member of the Australian business community, and he's active in philanthropy and education. David sits on many boards, has led several governmental inquiries, and is Chancellor of the University of New South Wales. David is a strong advocate for mentoring. He's a patron of Raise Foundation and chairs our Patrons Advisory Council, which is instrumental in our vision of scaling our mentoring programs so that every young person in Australia who needs a mentor can have one. I'll now hand over to David to host our panel discussion about what is happening for young people and how finding connection and belonging is key to overcoming the youth mental health crisis that we're facing. We're so excited to be part of a discussion with Monash University as well today. Thank you very much, David. Over to you.
Vicky, thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's an enormous pleasure, indeed an honour, to be allowed to host on behalf of Raise, an organisation I like very, very much, but also to host a committee, a lovely group of people who are so talented. So thank you very much. Many ask me why I chose Raise to get involved with. And don't worry, I'm not going to spend the rest of our hour telling you. I can do it very quickly. There are three main reasons. The first is that Raise, as Vicky's explained, and most of you know, is very involved in mentoring. I believe very strongly in mentoring. I've been both a mentor and a mentee on many, many occasions. And I actually despair for people who don't have the ability to get a mentor. And I think it's an enormous joy to be basically a mentor themselves. I think that mentoring is really important in schools, and indeed in what Malcolm Turnbull called Gonski 2.0. We spent a lot of time talking about mentoring, and I even embarrassed Vicky by mentioning Raise in that report. I don't know how many people read it, by the way, but it was certainly there. I think that Raise's choice of the years for this, if I may call it intervention, also appeals to me. Years 8 and 9, both from my own experience, even though I'm 100 years old, I still remember it. My children and now my grandchildren, I see those years as vulnerable, those years of growing up, those years of needing the ear of someone. And I think it's remarkable that Raise can do it and do it often, and hopefully do it even more. And finally, there is professionalism. Quite often, many of these groups are well-intended, but don't have that professional background. Vicky and her team bring that. And indeed, if I may say so, this evaluation that has drawn us together today is another piece of evidence of professionalism. It takes a lot of guts to get somebody outside, or a group of people outside, and if I may say so, a group of extremely high standing, which Raise chose, to actually verify or seek to verify what you're doing. I'm not in the least bit surprised that the results are as blatant, if I may call them that, as they've come out. And I really think it shows a professionalism that they're prepared to do that. Now, I was given about 60 minutes to speak, but I believe to summarize what I've just done in a few exactly goes to the heart of what I feel. Raise is a great organization, and I'm very, very happy to be associated with it and proud to be here today. And let me now go to our highly talented panel. I have a number of questions to ask them. We've tried to ameliorate them a little bit so they're not going to hurt them, but I think with a group of this intelligence, it'll be hard to stump them. Lucas, let me turn to you first. I understand that there are some key findings about loneliness and indeed belonging in the barometer which Vicky mentioned, that report that's released today. What is the Australian Youth Barometer, and can you tell us about the significance of those findings?
Thank you, David. So my team and I, since 2021, have been surveying over 500 young Australians in a nationally representative sample and interviewing 30 more to get a deep dive of their lived experience. Unwittingly, we ended up tracking what we're calling the pandemic generation, because we'll all recall that during those years, for significant proportions of the Australian population, young lives were upended in education, work, and social life. The study itself now is in its 4th year, and there are a couple of surprising findings about it, but one surprising aspect is the persistence of certain challenges. And I draw this group's attention to the key ones that relate to the following discussion. So, in the barometer released today, amongst 18 to 24-year-olds, we find that 98% of young Australians reported experiencing a feeling of anxiety or pessimism in the last year. 1 in 5 rated their mental health as poor, and only 46% rated it as good or excellent. Around 1/5 received mental health support, but importantly, 10% sought it but did not receive it. In the last 12 months, only 56% of young Australians felt like they belonged when they would spend time with friends. This finding in particular, I think, is one that's troubling, because we ask young people about the different contexts in which they belong, family, school, university, etc. But this one about their friendships is really striking, and I think we might unpack this a little bit more during this session. Our youth reference group, who informs everything we do and who provides a stellar introduction to the Youth Barometer, summarised the systematic pressures as follows. They framed these broad systematic pressures that young people face in terms of inertia, the principle that an object will remain on its existing path unless acted upon by an external force. So reviewing the kind of systematic challenges that young people face across a changing workforce, changing requirements of education, loneliness, lack of belonging, our youth reference group asks, is this path of inertia what we want for our movement as a generation? To paraphrase my friend and co-author, Blake Cutler, young people are thriving. Start again. Blake said, young people are not thriving, just surviving. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Lucas. That last statement, not thriving, just surviving, really summed it all up. And thank you for being so clear in your answer. Let's go, if we may, to Rachel. As we mentioned earlier, Rachel's from Mission Australia. And according to Mission Australia's annual youth survey, youth mental health and well-being is one of the top 3 concerns for young people. Rachel, what do our young people say needs to be done?
Thank you. For those of you who don't know the Mission Australia Youth Survey, we have run the youth survey. This is our 22nd year, and we survey annually about 20,000 young people across the country. This is a different age range than what Lucas was talking about. We're talking about 15 to 19-year-olds in our survey. And like David just said, over the past at least 5 years, the mental health concerns have come up as the biggest personal concern that the young people have faced in that past year. And it's come up in the top 4 concerns every year for at least 5 years. And when for the researchers in the room, this has come out of a free text field, actually. So the youth survey covers a number of things around aspirations and goals and kind of things like that. But also we have a free text field that says, what's your biggest personal challenge? And kind of in a similar proportions to the barometer, about a quarter of young people are saying that the mental health is the biggest concern that they're having. And they describe in those free text fields things like depression and anxiety, things like stress, things like low self-esteem. And corresponding to that question in the free text fields, we also ask them, what have you done that's helped? You know, what's working for you in that? And then also just going back to your question, David, about what more could be done for you? What do you wish had happened? And because your question was, what do young people say that needs to be done? And in that field, we see overwhelmingly, essentially it's easier and earlier help seeking. I wish I had gotten help quicker. I wish I'd got my diagnosis earlier. I wish I had, you know, but knowing that the support that was access to me, or I didn't access anything, but gosh, I should have. And we ask a number of questions in the survey also around, you know, did you actually get help? And so of the 10,000 people last year, 10,000 young people last year who said, I need mental health support, only 58% actually sought it. We also asked about the barriers that potentially are facing young people. The top ones are stigma and shame. And I think that talks to mental health literacy, which I think is improving on a societal level. But whether or not that interpersonal, the feeling of that young person actually feeling like I should be able to cope with this sits there. Confidentiality is also coming up. What are you going to tell my mum? If I talk to you about this as the trusted adult in my life, what do you have to tell my mum? And also cost and access. Overwhelmingly, though, we see, so the answer to the question is what young people say needs to be done is make help seeking easier, make it safer, make it quicker. Overwhelmingly in the survey, the preferences for that young people say for help seeking are face-to-face. So I think from a kind of a bit more of an overview level, we're really seeing this kind of connection and relationship and being able to, that young people being able to have a trusted adult in their life who is going to be able to make that help seeking easier is really becoming something that I know is pretty consistent with Ray's model, but also Lucas's findings and the other things that we see in the literature these days. So so I'd say young people are saying, make it easier for us to get help. We know that we need help. We generally know that they generally know when they need it. And they're just looking for it to be easy to get it. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you. And I think you made it very clear that what the young are saying is make help seeking easier. And that's really a takeaway from that. And thank you for all you're doing. Can we move then to Doug? Doug, as you recall, is from the Smith family, and they've just completed an in-depth research about supporting increased school completion and positive post-school pathways. Doug, how can individuals, organizations, and sectors support more young people to achieve success at school?
Thanks so much, David. And first up, let me say congratulations, Vicky and the RAISE team, for the terrific evaluation work that you've done. Great data and demonstration of accountability to your supporters and the community, and obviously then learning. So well done. And this sort of information is incredibly useful for our sector, particularly if we think about reforms underway. And I'm sure David was keenly interested yesterday in the Better and Fairer Education Schools Agreement that was announced. And pleasingly, wellbeing is right in the centre of those policy priorities. So it's timely research and incredibly important, because obviously there's a strong relationship, and we see this at the Smith family, between wellbeing, school attendance, school achievement, and school completion, which we know is so important for young people creating a great future and transitioning to further education or employment. When today we know that in the future, in fact, 8 out of 10 young people will need to have completed a tertiary education and make the most of a great career. And really, David, the research that we've done underscores the importance of those things. So we've been undertaking longitudinal research of young people who leave school from years 10 and year 12 over 3 years. It's now a big cohort of upwards of 6,000 young people. And what we're looking at in that is, what are the things that enabled young people to make a great transition, and what were the barriers for those young people? One key insight was that a young person who left school before completing year 12, 92% of those young people wanted to stay at school and complete school. So this tells us something significant that's not working in our community and the school context in particular. And I'll bring that back to wellbeing, but just a bit more context on that, because there's really push and pull factors. So push factors are really what I mentioned before about school attendance. So disengagement, we know that that relates then to lack of achievement and related problems. And when you dig into the kind of attendance issues, well-being and health-related issues are really critical drivers of young people disengaging. So this is where RAISE and mentoring programs are incredibly useful in addressing those push factors, but we also know there's pull factors. And at this point in time, what we're seeing particularly are those cost of living pressures. Young people not being able to afford to stay at school, needing to support family, often through seeking employment and other related things. So that's one insight I think that's relevant, David, around the number of young people that want to stay at school and what we need to do to help them. And then the other one that I'll end on is really about, and this is important for us at the Smith family, is around careers education. So of the young people that we surveyed, less than half of them found their careers experience useful. And actually 38% couldn't actually remember getting any careers related support. So that's, I think, a significant challenge for us. Unfortunately, it didn't feature in yesterday's report. There are many other priorities, of course. And this is where, again, mentoring, wellbeing, connection is incredibly important in connecting people with adults, with employers, practical experiences to ensure that they're connected with workplaces and employers, but also they have a contemporary understanding of the labour market. There's often a mismatch between perceptions and reality. And I think that brings it back to some of the things that we're talking about today. Is very much featured in our research, David.
Doug, thank you. And the 92% number of those who left and wanted to stay is a staggering one. I also should quickly add for the audience, I didn't put you up to talking about careers education, which we wrote on in Gonski 2.0, and you're right, not much has happened since, but well done on that one. If we can move to Lucy, as you'll remember from Vicky's description, Lucy works with RAISE, and she's been working round the clock on getting this independent evaluation together. And Lucy, can we ask, you've just completed the evaluation of the early intervention and prevention that can come from the mentoring program. You've done it, we know, with University of Melbourne and the Social Outcomes Lab. What are the findings of the study and what are the recommendations?
Thanks, David. It's great to be with you all today and to be talking on such an important topic with such experts in the field. So the evaluation compared the outcomes of students in the RAISE program to a comparison group of matched students. So students in the same year group at school and the same school, but students who were not in RAISE and who didn't have a mentor. The evaluation collected the same outcome data. So they asked the same questions at the beginning of the program and at the end. And they asked those questions on RAISE students as well as the comparison group. They also asked RAISE students about how they found mentoring. The outcome evaluation found that by the end of the program, RAISE students had improved their ability to ask for help. And it was great listening to Rachel then, thinking about what we can do and what we can do in the space of that early high school period where it's so important to get that help seeking. As well as asking for help, RAISE mentees improve their connection to others, to their peers, to their teachers, and their engagement and belonging at school, as well as a range of other outcomes. And this improvement was significantly greater than that of the comparison group. We saw those graphs before. The evaluation also found that RAISE students were more likely to improve their attendance at school. We know how important attendance is. We know how important it is for the post-school transitions as well that Doug was talking to. The economic evaluation looked at the social return on investment, and it found that RAISE returns $4.37 for every $1 invested. So they're things like avoided costs in healthcare and welfare, and the higher incomes that come from education and employment, as well as other benefits. The evaluations have confirmed what we see in our internal data at RAISE. So that's students who have a trained and trusted mentor and 2 terms of weekly mentoring with their individual mentor are equipped with the tools and skills to cope with the challenges that they have and to thrive. The evaluation also confirmed that the program has the most impact on students who most need it. So, for example, students with low help-seeking skills are more likely to improve those skills than students with average help-seeking skills. Our program is most effective when we are closing the gap for young people and giving them the same tools and skills that their peers might already have. So one recommendation of the evaluation was to work with schools to identify the right young people and to use what schools might already be able to access through student data more effectively. So we already do work very closely with schools around the selection of young people. But using this recommendation, we'll build on this through supporting schools to incorporate the use of the data that they have access to, or they might go on to have access to with different collections that might be put in place. The evaluation also recommended that RAISE really look further into how the program works for different groups of young people by using the data that we collect through our internal evaluation. So, for example, whether the program is more impactful for different genders or ages or personal backgrounds. By looking into this and by having this extra information, we can help support the training. We know already our mentors who might be listening in today love the training that we provide, find it really useful. But thinking about how we can give them even more support now to really individualise the mentoring program for their own mentee, and think about how we can support them through that use of data and data analysis. Conversations like this today are also really important for us to make sure that we are using the insights that are coming from our industry, from collections like Lucas's, like Rachel's, and to be thinking about how we can be using those insights, how we can be using the research that comes from Doug's team as well, to be future-proofing our program and to be making sure that it continues to support new generations of young people that come to us who might have different challenges, who might have different experiences. So the independent evaluation has confirmed what I know our mentors on the call today or listening in see every week, what I have seen by mentoring myself in our program, and what also we see through the internal data that we collect every year. And that's that RAISE mentoring works. We're using the evaluation's recommendations to strengthen our outcomes, and we really appreciate everyone who has been part of it. Vicky recognised people earlier in her opening, and I wanted to reiterate the amazing support that we have from our Research Advisory Council and our Evaluation Advisory Group, and the amazing expertise we've had from the team at the University of Melbourne and the wonderful team at the Social Outcomes Lab as well. But I wanted to end by recognising that hundreds of young people gave us their insights, shared experiences of their experience with RAISE, but also a huge amount of young people who participated in this program participated in this evaluation and not part of that program. They did that through absolute generosity, and we are so appreciative of it, and we really are going to make sure we act on these findings and we make our program even more impactful. Thanks so much, David.
Lucy, thank you, and congratulations on all your work in getting that together. And if I may also say, congratulations on telling us not just the stark, wonderful news, but the fact that there's more to do. Those extra recommendations still have to be put into place. I want to ask, if I may, Lucas, sorry to spring on you, Lucas, but are you surprised by what impact the RAISE independent evaluation has shown? And can you tell us a bit more from all the work that you do? of how mentoring can play such an important role in driving a connection and a belonging amongst young people and their communities.
Yes, David. On one level, I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But on another level, I was surprised at the strength of the findings, that the outcomes, as my colleagues from the University of Melbourne pointed out, exceeded expectations. So that's a pleasant surprise to have, and one of the joys of undertaking a rigorous independent evaluation. But looking at the deeper literature and the research around resilience in particular, we tend to think of resilience as something that is drawn from the individual in their ability to bounce back from adversity. But the really good research among social psychologists, for example, who examine adversity in really, really challenging contexts like floods and civil wars and so forth, have pointed out that resilience is also drawn from supportive networks of peers, of teachers, of parents and carers, and in this particular instance of mentors. So when we think about resilience, rather than focus exclusively on the individual, it's actually really important to understand the social ecology in which young people live. So when we see a carefully constructed evidence-based program that is seeking to match up young people with supportive, caring, and well-trained volunteers, it's not surprising that we're going to see positive outcomes. There are other reasons why I think that the evaluation findings were unsurprising. It's really important as a youth researcher, and as my colleagues will attest, Doug and Rachel in particular, that you need to go to where young people live. You need to go to the places that they pass through every day, whether they be schools or their local communities. And whether it's done virtually or face-to-face, mentoring can provide this powerful support that goes to the individual and goes to where they live. And as Lucy was saying, it's very, very important that research and evaluation is not seen as a static thing, but something that's organic and something that you build upon. So exploring nuanced ways in which mentoring can take place and be delivered is a very important next step. I thought Rachel said something very, very salient in relation to the stigma and shame, because people are often shy to put their hands up, and help seeking doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. So the idea that they're encouraged and fostered and have someone trusted to whom they can put their hand up, it's no wonder that that then flows on to their engagement within schools and classrooms. The last thing I'll say, which relates to what Doug was talking about, was that young people can't be what they can't see. And this is a widely stated observation in relation to careers education. Trusted mentoring can provide and open up worlds to young people. It can provide a language of possibility for young people. So it's no wonder that in the qualitative aspects of the findings of this evaluation, we see young people experiencing hope. We see young people engaging more at school. We see young people having more positive outcomes in their lives because of all of those factors that I've mentioned above. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, David.
Lucas, terrific, thank you. And I think your concept of supportive networks, broadening it, is absolutely right. And your concept also, the nuanced ways, because I think the way Rachel had put it was excellent as well. And finally, trusted mentoring. They're the three things that I took from what you said very strongly. So thank you, Lucas. I want to ask just one final question of the other three panel members before we go, if we have time. We could at any minute be cut off by Vicky, so I will speed this up. But my final question, I'm going to ask this one of all three of you, that is Doug, Rachel, and Lucy. Perhaps we'll start with you, Rachel. What do you think is the one thing we could collectively do to make tangible systems change to connection and belonging for young people in Australia? And you can pick up some of Lucas's things because he's already said a couple of them, but whatever you want to say.
Thank you. I might actually go go a little bit different, maybe pull a bit of Doug. I think housing, actually. I sit here thinking about, Doug mentioned it before, about the housing crisis, and that all of this isn't actually possible if young people don't have a safe, affordable place to lay their head with. And, they can't maintain a school attendance, can't maintain the relationships that they need to build those strong connections that Lucas was talking about without a house. And, I think about the affordable, the stark reality of not enough homes in Australia and not enough homes that we can afford, especially for people who are potentially experiencing the most kind of vulnerabilities in this area. So if I had a wish around tangible systems change in Australia, I would build houses, and then we can do this stuff. And I feel like this stuff is relatively, it's not simple, but it's there's a willingness for schools to engage in this. There's a willingness for communities to support young people, but without that basic infrastructure, I feel like that we would never, like, programs like even like RAISE, or even like that the Smith Family and Mission Australia provide, can never go to see the long-term outcomes and the intergenerational change that we need without a stable place to live and for a community to build around it.
Thank you,
George.
Rachel.
And
Sobering, but probably correct. Sorry, Lucas, please.
I was just going to echo Rachel that in the barometer today, housing is the #1 concern of young Australians. And not only because of the reasons that Rachel pointed out, but also because it symbolises a future. It symbolises a place to go, not just in the present, but in the future.
Well put. Doug, can I go to you and ask the same question?
Thanks, David. Echo my colleagues in terms of housing. We see the huge impacts, sadly, of insecure, unstable housing on a child's education, and we know making the most of an education creates a great platform for the future. So echo that, but I'll take it in a different direction. I'm really thinking about the transformative power of data, and I think we've seen that today in the work that RAISE has done. But I want to pick up on something that Lucy talked about in terms of the opportunity to work more closely with schools and leverage data and insights from schools in partnerships. Because there's, from our perspective, there's incredible data that sits inside government that can really enable our work, RAISE and colleagues' work, in helping us intervene early in problems and be more targeted in what we do. We just to exemplify that, the Smith family, we're now rolling out agreements with state education departments on school attendance and achievement data real time, and it changes the game for frontline team members working to identify the families that need to be supported immediately and having the right conversations. So, we often think about money from government as being the solution, and I can't help but think that it is to a degree after yesterday with the stalemate over education funding again, David, another generation. Sadly, it's enormously frustrating. However, there's also a huge opportunity in terms of thinking about data and how we can use that as the new currency, in effect, to create impact.
Thanks, Doug. Very well put. Lucy?
Yeah, amazing, Doug. And actually, what Rachel was talking about, what Doug just talked about there were two things that I would also very much say we see challenges. We've really seen that coming up in our surveys the last, particularly last year, and we expect to see that again this year around housing, also around obviously financial insecurity and what that can lead to a very young person. Also the opportunity to share data, to learn from each other, to think about the wealth of data we have individually across our industry, our sector, think about how we can really make use of that and see the synergies. And I love these conversations that we have around that. But one of the words I think that that Rachel said as well really resonated with me, which was connection and community, and the fact that we we know that our program is really effective because it not only supports the young person, but it also gives so much back to the mentor, and the mentor then goes off and takes that into their network and their community. We know that our mentors go off and use the skills that they learned from training, but also from mentoring, to go and support young people in their lives, in their workplaces, in their families. We also know at the end of that program that our young people want to go off and mentor, and they do. And we're just starting to get young people now who are coming to be mentors with us, who've been mentees with us in years gone by. And just that opportunity, I think, to think about place-based solutions really empower communities. Obviously having material needs, and we're talking about housing and financial security too, but the safety that comes from having real connection to community and having empowered communities who are making local choices that are appropriate and culturally safe and suitable for young people and for each other. And I think that mentoring also has a real part to play in that, just because of how consistently we see those outcomes rippling out. Thanks, David.
Lucy, thank you. And thanks to all who spoke on that question. Wonderfully put. Certainly something I'll be taking with me. We've got a couple of questions, or actually we've got quite a lot of questions, but we've got time for a couple of questions, as they say, from the vernacular, the floor. And Doug, I'm going to ask you this one, but I'm also asking the panel if after you've spoken, they don't have to, but if they've got something to add. It's a very good question. What's been asked is, what can school leaders learn from, whether it's the barometer's finding, the independent assessment on RAISE, your own work at Smith Family, your in-depth research, that will help make their own school wellbeing programs more effective?
Thanks, David. Yeah, what a great question. I think where I go to in thinking about that is the tremendous potential of school and community partnerships. Very often, and it's particularly challenging at the moment in school contexts where workforce challenges exist, where post-COVID we've got some issues in education, of course, and there are those resourcing challenges. So it's very easy for schools to be inward focused and consumed with just keeping the lights on, of doing the essentials. But we know, well, the evidence tells us that school leaders that are outwardly focused, developing partnerships creates much better outcomes for young people. And particularly thinking about those young people that are most disadvantaged, who often may not have the social capital in their own informal social networks, and particularly in terms of careers and employment. And that's why partnerships with business and other groups such as Smith Family and RAISE, I think, are incredibly useful for schools in helping get those great outcomes for young people.
Doug, thank you. Couldn't agree with you more. Lucas, Rachel, or Lucy, any burning question? Rachel?
I would say yes, Doug. And I want to say teacher wellbeing. If I was a school, I'd focus on teacher wellbeing. I'm thinking about research coming out of the University of Sydney at the moment around when teachers are good, kids are good. And so I think that's probably just an extra thing my 2 cents.
No, great point. Anything else from anybody? Because I can go to the next one. I think I'll go to the next one. And Lucas, I'm afraid I'm going to shoot this one to you, if I may. It's a good question too. In terms of supporting youth, it is sometimes difficult to understand whether a situation could help build resilience or be potentially damaging. What would be your recommendations on how to build youth resilience? You actually covered a bit of this earlier, but it'd be good to just hear that to this question.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, David. Firstly, ask young people. Ask them what they want. Ask them what they need. We often fail to do that, or when we do it in tokenistic ways. We see this happen over and over again, where we elicit data, to go back to Doug, from young people, and then not necessarily employ it. And interestingly enough, to link back to the evaluation, is that, as Lucy pointed out, they did collect data from young people and they listened. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in creating safe environments, you really have to be taking into consideration the age of where the young person or child is at, their actual living circumstances, so what their family and parental caring aspects of their lives might be like, and their cultural orientations are also very, very important. So we have to take into consideration a very nuanced picture of the young person before we engage in the conversation in order to ensure that resilience is done in a way that is productive and not counterproductive. I'll tell you one way that is counterproductive is telling them to harden up or that they're snowflakes. They're more resilient than we give them credit for, and we've just got to build on that resilience. Thanks, David.
No, well put. Any other short comments that any of the panel wanted to add to that question, that answer? Doug.
David, just to jump in there and bring in another kind of factor in a young person's life that can often be overlooked, and that's the role of parents and carers, who are, so critical. And, one proxy of a young person making the most of their education is actually the degree to which that a parent and carer is engaged in their education, has a hugely beneficial impact. So I think sometimes in our practice, we don't have an eye to the family context in which we're operating. It's outside perhaps the scope of mentoring, of course, but I think that's enormously helpful in thinking about the sustainability of these young people's lives.
Thanks, Doug. Rachel or Lucy, nothing from you? Well, look, let me, I'm being buzzed here because I know our time is coming to an end. But Vicky, I not only personally congratulate you on the outcome of the assessment, but also on putting together such a wonderful panel. I mean, I wrote down a whole lot of things from what the panel said. Very gifted, very thoughtful, and a great pleasure to be involved. So now over to you, Vicky.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, everybody. It's so inspiring and yes, so interesting to listen to all of you. I could listen to you for hours. Talking though, we have a very special guest now, and talking about asking young people and getting their voices, including their voices. I wanted to introduce you all to a remarkable young person who's joined us today. Hi, Dylan. We should be spotlighting you now. Dylan Harris joins us today, and he's a member of our Youth Advisory Council, and he's also been a mentor with us as well. And so, it's all very well for all of us to sit here as old people talking about what we need for young people, but actually we would love to hear from you, Dylan, some of your perspectives and some of your reflections on the conversation today. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Vicky. Yeah, I thought all the perspectives were really insightful, and it makes me really happy to know that RAISE is really headed by people with such great insights. I just wanted to, I don't want to take up too much time because obviously you guys are all very much more esteemed than me. But yeah, I think any kind of more legitimacy, which this independent review is obviously for, is going to help RAISE get into more schools and eventually create more mentees, which is, I think, always a good thing. I was so impressed when I was a mentor at the results that were created by me and other people. And I just think it's a really well-run program, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
So great to have you here with us, Dylan. And I think there's lots of young people watching as well. So it's great to hear your perspective. Your input is something that we really highly value at RAISE, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your reflection with us. Your voice and the voice of young people is so important in this, so thank you. So I just wanted to wrap up our webinar today and thank David firstly, so not only for being our remarkable patron, but also for hosting the panel with these esteemed guests, including you, Dylan. I still pinch myself every single day that you, David, are willing to do so much for RAISE. So I can't thank you enough for being here and for being our patron. Thank you very much to our panel members. for participating and sharing your important work and your valuable insights with all of our guests today. We at Raise feel very humbled that we can sit alongside all of you today. My very sincere thanks go to each and every one of the people who've joined this conversation today. Every one of you contributes to the Raise Village in your own important way in terms of sharing your time and your treasure and your talents with us. And, you know, the two simple words of thank you just don't cut it in terms of how much gratitude we have for you. I really hope that each of you can see that, you know, this research that we've talked about today from Monash and the Smith family and Mission and Raise, and I hope it helps you to feel encouraged about the significant difference that your contribution does make to the work that we all do, and, you know, the much needed support that we all together give to young people in our country. Raise is working towards doubling our impact. Again, we're known for ambitious goals here at Raise, and we want to give a trained and trusted mentor to over 5,000 struggling young people every single year by 2027. So with all of your continued time, treasure and talent, I know that we can significantly improve youth mental health in our country, and we can do that together, and that we can help struggling young people in Australia to find more connection and more belonging. Yeah, I'm just going to end on that note, but I'm so grateful to all of you. I'm not a very proud person, but I'm very proud today to be here with all of you. So I wanted to share one more video with you because we do have time, which is great. And this is a remarkable gift from the Social Outcomes Lab and Gavin Blake, who did an animation of what our independent evaluation represents. So I'm going to share this with you, and again, hope that it works.
Young people in Australia are facing an ongoing mental health and wellbeing crisis. Soaring levels of household stress, poverty, bullying, and social media means they're living with anxiety from the moment they wake up, and too many die by suicide. When young people start high school, they're navigating the tumult of adolescence, and extra challenges piled on top can be life-altering. By connecting them with a supervised, trained and trusted mentor who shows up every week for 6 months, we can positively change their trajectory. Raise Youth Mentoring offers a preventative solution, now scientifically proven, which increases help seeking, resilience, school engagement and hope. Imagine two 13-year-olds in early high school. Meet Alex and Jordan. Both young people are confronted with relentless challenges. They struggle with little support, experience crippling anxiety, which spirals into unmanageable anger, and find it really tough to get to school. A teacher suggests Alex joins the Raise mentoring program. They give it a try and get matched with a caring mentor who makes them feel heard. Together, they brainstorm how to get help for Alex's anxiety. Alex goes on to do better at school, and their mentor says, "There's nothing you can't do, Alex," when they graduate from the program. Alex never forgets that line. They become the first person in their family to go to uni, and they build a career, becoming financially independent. Sadly, Jordan struggles even more without mentoring support, drops out of school, jumps around jobs, and has to rely on welfare payments. Every young person like Jordan needs a Raise mentor because it works. We know this because the impact has been scientifically proven through a rigorous independent evaluation. The study found that participation in Raise leads to improved mental health through increased connectedness and resilience, and improved school attendance and completion, just like it did for Alex. For every dollar invested in Raise, there is a social impact return of $4.37. Investing in Raise means you're not just improving one young person's life, you're investing in the future prosperity of our whole country. How can you help give a Raise mentor to every young person in Australia who needs one?
That's us, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining, and thank you for the conversation.